political arena, and of course news making headlines by Ray Manyara. Remember to follow us at Ray Manyara, at KBC Television, at Safin_Cheng, and at Ram Aguko. Right now we are shifting gears on to Eye on Politics, discussing matters politics. In studio, I'm joined by Daniel Kibet, to my father's right. He is a political analyst. Next to me, Arebo Moyo, lawyer, and of course Daniel Orogo, political analyst, also right here in studio. This is Eye on Politics. Gentlemen, karibuni sana.
Thank you.
Seemingly there is a lot of commotion concerning matatus. I don't know how you found your way to studio today. How was your morning been? What did you take concerning this matatu menace?
Morning is easy. We're here, despite the matatu strike. That clearly shows we didn't use a matatu. Okay, but I've seen so many matatus have avoided the roads, which then shows that there is something that they don't have. I mean, these are laws that have been there, and the enforcement mechanism is what has been lagging behind. I'm told that from Rongai to town now they're charging 300. I mean, if you're in Rongai and you want to get to Nairobi, just go to Naivasha or go to Kisumu. It's cheaper than getting to town. But let's look at the policy. Let's implement it. Yes.
Of course, we have the issues with policies, whether the Chuki rules should come back. Let me get it from you.
Did they go away? I mean, you can't say they're coming back and yet they didn't go away.
They don't go away. What happened in the course of time?
Thanks, Ram. I think, let me just echo what my colleagues just mentioned. I found it so difficult to access here, and I think rightfully you can observe that a number of matatus or these vehicles are avoiding to hit the road. So the question is, why would that happen right now? I mean, it's a clear indication that, you know, these guys have been, the transport sector or matatu sector at large, have been not really abiding by the transport rules and regulations. But that brings to fore a number of things. One is really the sustainability of these policies, the enforcement, and probably are they really sustained? Are they really sustainable all through? Or is just a matter of public declaration and you need the helabaloo about it within some times? People resort back to the normal traffic rules. So I think that's what I was questioning, really observing that the hiking of fares. And I keep on wondering why. If there is strikes or any hiccups within transport sector, somebody just hike the prices of, you know, you don't really understand why would that always happen every time. 70 bob, you know, from a place where you actually pay 30 shillings to town. So you ask yourself a number of questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Now, the Matatu Association should stop playing theatrics with Kenyans. These laws have been there since the time of Michuki, and no one removed the laws. The speed governors and the safety belt are things that when you buy a Matatu and put it on the road, they're supposed to be there up to now. So they should not ask Kenyans to give them time so that they can implement the issue of safety belt and speed governors. So the matatu should come back to the roads, and those matatus that will not be back to the road, they should be scrapped off from the circle, and they should not be allowed to operate.
I think before, there's something very important is said. Before that public vehicle can be allowed now to get that PSV license, there is a checklist on what it's supposed to have.
Yeah.
I mean, then once it goes through that checklist, once they ensure that, number one, the vehicle has the yellow line as it's supposed to be, has the seats as they're prescribed. Now we have a policy that touches on, if it's a bus, on the type of bodybuilding. Then it still looks at on the issues of the seat belts. So once that checklist has been done with, that is when now that matatu can be allowed to be given a PSV license.
So you had mentioned earlier that the Michuki laws have always been there.
They have always been there.
Why is it now that we are having it?
It's a theatrics.
I mean, it's theatrics.
There is no Kenyans.
I always tell
like
you
if
that.
you have boarded a matatu, you'll see there's a speed governor. You'll hear that 222 sign when it passes 80 kilometers per hour. You'll see a couple of city belts. Though they are not functioning, they are still there. So the yellow lane are still there. There's no need for this commotion that's happening right now.
As Daniel said, that these pronouncements from the implementers, which also put them in some kind of dark corner, and then you start questioning, where have they been? Why are we now coming up and saying, hey, from this week we need to implement the laws? I mean, it's like now saying that, hey, from this week I'll stop stealing. These laws are there in the transport sector. We don't have to wake up one day and say we now need to start implementing them. These are things that we need to systematically implement. I mean, you see a bus driving, probably you're in a small, you're in a private vehicle which is doing 120, then you see just a bus overlapping, and then you're like, okay, this one is overtaking. It's supposed to be at 80.
Yeah.
And you wonder what. And that is why I told you before that some things that happen in the matatu industries in Kenya, you think you're in a movie. I mean, we talked about the issue of that bus that hit a police vehicle. You're like, really, what's going on? If they can do that to a police vehicle, I'm told when they hit another smaller car of another driver, that guy will just throw 30 bob to you and tell you, go and repair your vehicle. I mean, those are just theatrics.
So the kind of commotion, even Kenyans are being affected right now. Do you see it as being something that maybe it's we're trying to change our tactic in handling matatu menace and matatu problems? Maybe do you say that maybe we give them the benefit of the doubt?
Well, I think I'm trying to look this in totality. One is the fact that who owns these matatus, you know. You know, when you reflect properly, as much as they are within the umbrella of Matatu Owners Association, you find that a number of matatus sometimes are owned by corporals and, you know, these police and even very influential people within our society.
So they're the ones who don't follow the law.
So they are the ones actually who don't follow the law. And one of the things that you're going to see is that there's going to be a continuous frustration when it comes to implementation of these policies, because then you see, that will not really benefit. The benefactor here will feel so threatened by these strict regulations. Okay. And you see, moving onwards, like my colleagues have said, you know, these are rules that have been there. The NTSA Act has been there for some times. And you find that, you know, the only problem is the sustained implementation. And you see, strictly being abiding by the rules and regulations of these acts. But then sociologists will say there is a subculture, the matatu subculture that we are seeing. And especially that is within our young people. Like Areba just mentioned, how would you find it so comfortable to hit a police car and you see, and find it even so easy to celebrate, you know, that kind of that kind of environment. Ram, you remember in your time, even just by the fact that you could reply a police, you know, a policeman or a police officer, you know, you have to care and go down to.
There is this
you see,
fear.
There is this fear. But you see, nowadays, you know, you just do anything. Like, you know, as much as we are transforming, you know, the police from a police force to a police service and expect these kind of law regulating authorities to be human. But at the same time, the subculture that we are creating out of, you know, our society reflects a lot. So even if we are going to talk about implementation of these Michuki rules, they have been there, like my colleagues have seen. But is our society really able to keep up with this kind of rules and regulations that have been there? The problem might not even be the law enforcing agencies, but within even the citizenry. If we cannot really follow all the laws for a number of time, who tells us that we will abide by NTSA Act and the rest?
Then you doubt even the police reforms.
Yes.
Yeah, I completely doubt the police reforms. The police reforms won't help. Changing,
they're even
what do you think
uniforms, they're changing.
How will uniform make a police stop taking bribe? You're just pulling the police from the bush and bringing him to the city, because you're giving him another cloth to wear so that he cannot be seen as a bushman, but an urban person. So there's nothing that you're changing.
You would call the police bushmen.
I'm just saying, I'm just quoting. Yeah?
I think this is a
I'm not calling, I'm just saying.
Let me say something here. The hashtag is
the views expressed here are ours.
The hashtag is Good Morning Kenya on Twitter. This is I on Politics. Now, disclaimer. The views said here are neither mine nor that of the corporation. They are strictly for the panelists, their own.
Ram is afraid of losing his job, but it's
no,
okay.
I'm not.
Okay, what do you say?
We must have journalistic stance.
Let me explain.
I get
what I'm saying is simple. Whatever they've been doing is not because of the uniform they've been wearing.
What is it?
The character
the reason?
and the modules that have been implemented in the system. If you can come up with good framework, not changing uniform, come up with good framework whereby it will certify both the citizen, the public, and the government.
Remember, it is this bushman who is currently stopping vehicles, matatus, from the road. We had it started yesterday morning.
But now, I'll pick it from where my friend has left. Who own those matatus? Most matatus, about 60% are owned by the political caucus or the policemen. So one, if you stop a matatu as a junior officer, the driver will just call the inspector or the OSCS of that police station or where police station is and say my vehicle has been caught. So the OCS will call his commander, the traffic commander, and say my vehicle has been caught, can you release it? And that's all.
On what you say, there was a single matatu that on Langata Road sometimes back had an accident near Langata Police, and it killed around 4 people. The same matatu was towed to Langata Police Station, and I think it stayed there for a couple of times. And there was a hula baloo about revoking its license and everything. The same matatu changed its route and started operating the Kitengela route under some other umbrella. It got another accident. It's only Kenyans who noticed the number plate and said, hey, is this not the same vehicle that got an accident on Langata Road sometimes, killing like 4 passengers, including some students from Multimedia University? And it has already been rebranded, and it's operating on another route. So what he's saying is that as much as we want to transform the police force into a service, there is more that needs to be done to change even the way they react to situations. There is more that needs to be done when it comes to training. There is more that needs to be done when it comes to capacity building. I know the government has done a lot when it comes to vehicle leasing, but still, as late as last Friday, I was having a case of where we had somebody arrested in Embakasi, supposed to be transferred to a central police station, and they were unable to find a vehicle. So we still need this change of mentality, even from the police themselves. So they need some kind of, I don't know to call it some kind of transplant of the culture. You go to other countries, and when a police flags you down, you have a conversation. Here in the country, I mean, if you see a police, you're like, Mukubwa, tufanyaje? I mean, we need to change that mentality.
Should we change now? Is it about now the mentality itself or the laws too?
No. Let's not talk about the law. The laws are there. What I always say is, with the laws that we have we implemented them to a level that we're saying now there's a vacuum why we need more laws? In the real sense, we have very good laws, but then we do not implement them. Even the police themselves, they have procedures they need to follow when handling people. I mean, but then do they implement that? So as he said, it's not all about just changing the clothes. It's not about changing just the forest and picking, quote unquote, a monkey from Mabira forest and placing it in Kakamega forest. There needs to be more that needs to be done.
So now, based on this kind of events now, we are having matatus now being removed from the roads. Kenyans are now trekking, and some are even having trouble even going to work as we speak. Do you see this as something that will make a matatu owner or matatu driver or someone who just has powers over matatu to say that I would like to change this so that I can also take my vehicle to the road, because they are also being affected business-wise?
Really?
Well, I think the requirements, that is why the purpose of the law normally I think is to restore some order and, you know, ensure that there is efficiency in terms of doing some things that
Won't it be restored at the end of the day?
I think right now, from what I have observed this morning, if we go that kind of route, Kenyans must begin to appreciate that, you see, the statistic that is always shared at each and every year, the number of lives that are lost in the road, you know, in this kind of you know, transport sector is so alarming. And you see, it's better to, they say it's better to arrive safe, you know, however much you're commuting or you're walking, it's better to arrive safe than lose your life in a very grisly way for the facts that could be avoided. So I think the only way we would go right now is, I always really not begin to point fingers as the government as an institution, because the police officers and people who are within these institutions are from us as citizens. You know, including the president and whoever, the Boynet and the rest. These are people who are among us as a citizen of Kenya. They are within our society. So I think the most important thing right now is to make Kenyans understand that we need to be very strict in implementing these policies and regulations, because it's for the sake of your safety when you're traveling to various parts of this country or you're going back or forth from your job, so that Kenyans begin to understand. Remember, there is a time even when in the run-up of 2002, after the 2002 election, when Kenyans were even reporting police who were taking bribes along the road, and Kenyans who were actually refusing to board a matatu that is already full. You see, by that kind of understanding that Kenyans now own, these reforms, citizens own these reforms, as opposed to, coming from up to bottom, I would begin to say that we should find a level playing ground where we meet both within the policy implementers and citizens at large.
Now, let's now shift gears now. Iron politics now changes. Let's talk about the 2022 election debate. We have currently President Uhuru Kenyatta has, of course, warned the leaders, of course, from the central Kenya backyard, that he said that they will be surprised at his choice for the successor when he eventually reveals who he will support for the 2022 election, presidential election. Do you see this as something that is a game changer, also considering that Honorable Raila Odinga had said that he is not going to leave politics, that he is still here, that it's not that his hands will be, of course, across the board?
Thank you. Now, we don't need to be discussing 2022 politics as per now. That's what the president is just saying. There are better things that we need to discuss, like the high cost of living, the issues of infrastructure, the issue of the high rising debt loans that we are borrowing. Currently, I'm hearing that we are about to borrow another 280 billion for Eurobond. Those are things that we are supposed to discuss. But let us discuss that. 2022 politics is another different ballgame. There are different factors that are put into play for you to become a president in 2022. One is the political census that is coming. Someone was telling me that the Luhya community is the leading community as per the census that will be conducted in 2019. So, as deputy president, if he can join hands with the Luhya community, that will boost him a lot. Another thing is the referendum issue. The referendum issue might help a political contender in two different scenarios. One, the proposals that are being made in the referendum are two deputy prime minister, two vice president. So in choosing your vice president, it will be much easier in tackling the issue of inclusivity. As a deputy president, I know that's what is disturbing him so much. Who will he choose as his deputy vice president, as his vice president? So with the play of having two vice presidents in play and two prime minister, the issue of inclusivity has been tackled in his backyard.
No, of course, with regards to what you've just said here, that we should not be talking about 2022 elections in 2018.
Yeah, we shouldn't.
But regardless of it, we are still talking about it.
Yeah, you know what?
It is still, people are still campaigning.
You know, like Central last year, not last week, they held a meeting and they were discussing, saying that they are the major contributors to the GDP. I want to say in the public television, that's a lie. They say that they're contributing 60% of the GDP.
And of course, they
don't contribute 60%.
They were making demands for the president, wanting him to do 1, 2, 3 things.
Yeah, and I support the president. The president told them, can you come? We discuss on the issue of the coffee industry in Murang'a, in Kirinyaga, and in Nyeri. That's the issue that's affecting the Kenyans.
Would you say they're doing nothing?
They're doing nothing in that issue. They've never discussed it in the public domain, whereby they said we've come up with this plan and this module whereby we can implement and revive the coffee industry in the Central Province.
I think as much as we try to avoid the debate on 2022, we have been, I mean, as a Kenyan, you've seen the joke of the brain and everything. As a Kenyan, if I was to do a graphical design of our brain, then on the larger part I'll put it politics. Then somewhere else I'll put it food. Then somewhere else probably I'll put China.
That is your brain.
I mean, what I'm saying is that as a normal Kenyan, as an ordinary Kenyan, we have metamorphosized in a way that when you wake up, when you sleep, when you eat, when you do everything, there is a political aspect. Because politics in Kenya control each and every aspect. I mean, the matatu issue that we have been speaking, I mean, there is always a political angle. There are times we have talked about banning them to town, coming to town. But then, due to the political capitalism that we need at a particular time, we have not been able to implement that. So the reason why we cannot avoid these conversations is because politics play a key role in our country, be it in the economic sector, be it in the social sector. So as much as even the president tries to tell us, hey guys, 2022 is still very far. Can we discuss about other things? We cannot, because there is a political angle. The sugar sector, the coffee sector, the maize sector, every sector. At the end of the day, we find that politics control it. And even on this show before, we have said, hey, can we stop talking about politics and let's talk about other things? But here, look at you. This morning, you are telling us again to discuss about 2022. So 2022 will come and go. It's still a very long period of time to go.
Do you think it could be because we are having so many problems and you are trying to find out, could the problem be with our leadership then? That's why the debate
the problem has always been with our leadership, and I think the panel will agree with me. Yes. I mean, it's in our leadership, and it's also with us, because the people we choose,
they
directly. I mean, if I'm to choose you as my leader,
that's beating us when we went and casted a vote to vote for those leaders. We shouldn't blame the leaders. We should also blame ourselves.
Then we should also not just be talking about presidential elections. We should also be talking about Kenya transforming Kenyan citizenship, the mindset behind the elections.
Now, Ram, I would try to approach this in two dimensions. One is, ideally speaking, you know, an ideal Kenyan situation would really require all our leaders right now to, first of all, ensure that our Big Four agenda is fast-tracked. And, you know, ideally speaking, would be implemented. You know, Kenyans should have a proper housing, and, you know, young people who are tamaking should really reap the benefits of a robust, you know, manufacturing industry. And you see, these are all Kenyans who, instead of, you know, finding it difficult to have healthcare system, traveling to India and all this, should have a very universal healthcare system within the country. And you see, that is an ideal situation. But the real situation about our Kenyan politics right now is like the Gema House have realized, you know, that there is no kingpin. You know, this is the worry about not having whoever is a point person. You know, the direction towards they're taking is like after the retirement of the President of the Republic of Kenya, you know, they would not have any strong person, you know, to take over. And you see, it's not really them having a problem. Even the Luo nation had actually had a problem when Orengo was coming out, and people were even proposing between Orengo and, you know, some bigwigs who would inherit when Raila is out of political stage. So, realistically speaking, we cannot say that we avoid politics, and especially politics of succession, when in the background of this, we are still yearning for, you know, the elimination of boundaries that is coming, and, you know, the population census that is coming. There must be politics that is involved. But right now, I would really want to draw your attention to two situations that happened last week. One is the impromptu lunch meetings in the residence of the deputy president.
Yeah.
And you see,
of course, we had the businessman on
yes,
there.
and you see
can't people just
it is alleged.
I mean, can't just people eat?
It is alleged that the business mogul was there, but you see, officially the photos that we saw are from 4 people. And so we are yet to find out if Jimmy Wanjigi was in that lunch.
He asked a very good question. Can just people eat?
Just people meet and eat lunch?
And you see, of course there is a political discussion about this. And you see, that is one of the things that I would like to draw the country's attention, the political attention. The other thing is the fact that President Kenyatta had actually had to actually attend the Nyeri meeting and reprimand the members of parliament who were there to focus on what is coming. So these two scenarios we are seeing there is probably going to be a political shift. And of course, DP Ruto is in Nyanza, touring Nyanza region. And for development purposes. Yeah, and meeting the MPs who are rejected in the last election.
You sound sarcastic.
You know.
No. So he's going, I can even give you his itinerary. He's going to launch some very good projects in Migori, yes.
So, you know, we are having a situation where, you know, you are told, you know, please don't concentrate, the Tanga squad. Do not Tanga up and down or whoever you see, tell him to concentrate on this. But in the background, we are seeing people who are meeting and discussing the agenda of 2022. So I think there's a shaping in the political scenario, while others are barring others from talking about succession, others are traversing the country actually speaking about succession politics in it.
And speaking of succession here, we have two people that I would like us to put our eye on.
Yeah.
Gideon Moi and, of course, William Ruto. Gideon Moi, Honorable, went to Nyanza.
Yeah.
And right now we are seeing, of course, Ruto also going to the same place. And of course, there is this battle for supremacy in the Rift Valley, seemingly. And both of them are harboring presidential ambitions.
Yeah.
So do you think is Ruto's visit to Nyanza, of course, a way to, is it like a comeback to Gideon Moi's visit in a way that can make him also to gain some political stand?
Ruto is not gaining any political mileage from Nyanza.
But Gideon Moi is.
Gideon Moi, on my own view, that's my own view, is too green to become a president of the Republic of Kenya right now. But now, that will depend on if he gets a backing from the Prime Minister. If the Prime Minister supports him and doesn't vie in the 2022 election, that will be a different ball game in its own. Because you see, Nyanza province, if we come into statistics, Jubilee last year in Migori, they were able to garner about 42,000 votes, and ODM was about 270,000. So you see, Deputy Ruto going there is not going to change anything much from the figures that we got in 2017 election. And in Homa Bay, Jubilee got about 1,900 votes, and NASA, they were able to go about 396,000 votes.
But
so you can't change that. You know what Raila did when he was building his own political career? He gave his people that spirit of sycophancy, whereby if Baba says we are supporting Gideon Moi, that's the way it will go. So Nyanza province politics, it all depends on what Raila will say. If Raila vies, so Gideon Moi won't get anything. He won't even get up to even 1 million votes in the entire Republic of country, because he's backing on Nyanza and a bit of Western.
But Ruto will vie. And
Ruto will vie. That I'm sure, but he won't get more than what we got. Actually, he won't get more than what we got. That I'm sure. I'm a data analyst. I'm a data analyst.
These are guys who have already cast votes and
I'm a data analyst. Let me tell you. Let me explain statistically. You see, the reason why Migori, assuming Obado was there, Obado is a rival of Baba, but Jubilee itself got 1,900 votes. You're getting? The point I'm trying to pass to you is Nyanza province is all about sycophancy. It's not about who is coming to do what. That's why I'm telling you, it won't change much by the two people visiting Nyanza province. It all depends on what Raila supports.
These are visits by two different people of different personalities. We are having a visit by the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, and then the other visit was by a senator who went to see his colleagues. So we need to distinguish these two visits. Whereas the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya is going for development issues, the senator went for a Harambe, and probably, I don't know whether there was a funeral or so. So these are two different visits which are, unparalleled. These are, it's one side of the coin and the other side of the coin. So we cannot try to look at it from where I sit, that one person is feeling threatened by the other person who has gone to another place. So he has to quickly rush there to try and do what the other person did. I think the Ruto visit to Nyanza has been, I believe, has been postponed previously, and I think this is now the time that they have decided to go there. On the issue of the supremacy battle, I'm not sure whether there has ever been any supremacy battle in the Rift Valley between Ruto and Gideon Moi. I believe that as we are currently speaking, there is a de facto leader when it comes to those communities which are there. Whereas Gideon Moi enjoys some kind of support from his county and some parts of the north, William Ruto also enjoys support from other parts of the region. So I'm not seeing really the supremacy battle that you're trying to create unless you can really show that indeed there is this supremacy battle between these two personalities. I don't see it so. And remember that as we are currently speaking, one is the deputy president, another one is a senator. I mean, that settles it.
I would like
that nearly settles it.
Perspective here that it was just a while back that the deputy president went to visit the former president, and it is Gideon Moi who prevented it.
I also went to visit the... I also went to visit...
How does President Moi change anything in the politics?
You see, the fact about these political maneuvers is actually what you pointed out. There is a systematic plan to chunk out the voting system especially on Rift Valley. And I think one of the things that I always advise the handlers of Gideon Moi, first of all, is to begin to tell Gideon Moi not to ride on his father's name.
Yeah.
You understand?
Is he?
That is what he's doing. That is what he's doing. And you see, President Moi had been, there are people who appreciate him in equal measure. There are people who really do not appreciate him. So Gideon Moi should be a man of his own making, he shouldn't be riding out of his father's legacy and his father's name. And you see, electorates really look at a number of things when it comes to that. Now, on the other side, William Ruto should not be riding on the theme of chicken seller or a hustler. Not every Kenyans wanted to vote hustlers. Not every Kenyans would want to vote people who are chicken sellers. William Ruto must actually be abrasive as William Ruto. And one of the things that always happens, and you see, like his deputy president has been so strong when it comes to matters of constitutional reforms. And this is what markets him. And one of the things I always tell him, could you begin to rebrand yourself? Because there is a constitutional change that is coming. Constitution has marketed William Ruto for even the last, when he campaigned against the Constitution, and he came out so strong. And this is not going to be similar. History repeats itself, Ram. And I would like to also tell you, in 1978, when the deputy president was just about to inherit, the health about the first president issue was coming in, there was a change of constitution by some section of Gema community to bar President Moi from ascending and inheriting Kenyatta by that time. Right now, history repeating itself. When President Kenyatta is just about to exit the stage and William Ruto is being fronted as a successor, people have actually begin again to say about constitutional change, to introduce the position of a prime minister. And that is becoming a threat. That is becoming, is barring. It's becoming so malicious according to the debate president's camp. So one of the things, William Ruto should actually look at the NASA principles who are not within the camp. Take Mudavadi right now to be in his camp. Take Senator Wetang'ula to be in his camp. Look for Kalonzo Musyoka as a running mate, or anybody who would want to bring advantage to that. Because Kenyan politics is actually beginning to reshape itself again.
Now, I need to say something small about what he said. That Gideon Moi needs to come out of his father's sitting room and go out and meet people. I mean, he should not just depend on who has gone to see his father to take photos and upload them on Facebook. The era of campaigning using in the sitting room has all gone. And you can see how the deputy president has come out all guns blazing. This is a man who has a lot of humor, a lot of wit. You saw what he did on Mashujaa Day on the issue of the crocodile. So, so if really Gideon Moi thinks... if Gideon Moi at all believes and dreams of ever coming up with a formidable campaign mechanism that is going to rival for the deputy president, then he needs to wake up. Because, I mean, the deputy president is an incumbent, and this is a man, he's already out there. This is a man who wakes up in Nairobi, does a rally in Kisii, goes to Kerugoya, sleeps in Kampala for another function. While the same day, Gideon Moi wakes up in Kabarak, takes photos in Kabarak, takes photos in Kabarak, and takes other photos in Kabarak. I mean, you cannot then come out and say...
equate these two people?
No, you can't.
Another thing I want to pick from Daniel. Daniel said Deputy President should deviate from this issue of hustling. But I like to tell you, the hustler slogan is what I think will build him much. Because you see, 2022 politics is all about dynasties versus hustlers.
Okay.
So, if he can play well with this slogan of the hustler issue, it can bring more clout to his team than deviating from the issue.
Now, time is not on our side.
Okay.
And I would like us just touch on one more thing here, just for like 5 minutes or so, if possible.
Yeah.
MCAs are impeaching a lot of people of late. Homa Bay County Assembly Speaker Elizabeth Ayo has been impeached. Nairobi County Speaker, of course, Betty Lati, we had a debate about here. We had the members of the Busia County Assembly threatening to impeach the governor, so Peter
Odiamong.
Kakamega MCA has also
Buluma.
impeached their county speaker, that is Morris Buluma and Clark Patrick Wafula.
Yeah.
What is happening? Are we having issues of power, or is there a problem?
Now the problem started here. When the political parties bulldoze the speakers to the MCAs. Like they forced the MCAs to vote for those people. You see, if the MCAs were let to vote for their own people they want, we could never be experiencing this issue. An issue like Nairobi, Elachi was bulldozed by the Jubilee Party.
Elachi was bulldozed.
MCAs were called to State House, and they were asked, guys, we need Beatrice Elachi to be the Speaker of Nairobi. So in this scenario, Elachi had never interacted or had never had that good rapport with the MCAs. So that's an issue where it really started. Yeah. Another thing, I think...
I want us to take this in a very quick and swift way.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let me come to Areba. You are reading our constitution.
I mean, this is the law. And
you carry the constitution.
This is the law as it is. And last night I gave a copy to some lady MCA and told her to read it first before we could debate. I think all the problem really lies in Article 193 of the Constitution, in that the wording itself says that for you to be qualified as an election as a member of county assembly, you have to be a registered voter, satisfies any educational, moral, and ethical requirements prescribed by this constitution or an act of parliament. I mean, this is a very large vacuum then, in that we do not have any prescription of having somebody as an MCA. As I said before, MCAs are like the base, are like the core people who interact with the people, and when it comes to legislative agenda, they're the ones who originate legislation that helps people down in the villages. Now we have given these roles to people who are just criminals. I mean, they don't understand, who are just criminals. They don't understand what this role is. MCAs are running amok in this country. They're impeaching left, right, and center. In Kakamega, you see the reasons why Buluma was impeached. He did not, he refused to agree to the mortgage and I think the car loans for the MCAs. We do not have substantial reasons why MCAs are impeaching people left, right, and center. In fact, a common joke is that these MCAs very soon they're going to impeach themselves.
Daniel.
Well, I think when we vote members of county assembly from all the 47 counties, we are having 1,450 members of county assembly in the whole nation. Kenyans are paying for everything that they would require, including their illicit sitting allowances and traveling allowances. But now, the roles of an MCA, that is representation, you see, matters of policy, legislation, and oversight. We have actually voted what I call, for lack of a better word, it's a character of thuggery within our members of county assembly. Where on earth would an MCA steal a mess and run with a mess, you know,
to avoid a sitting,
to avoid the sitting from taking place? It has never happened anywhere except in Kenya. You know,
those are things you watch in movies.
You know, yeah, those are things unexpected.
Doesn't it even disapprove our credibility as a country? Our MCAs misusing their powers.
Ram, I told you, the problem started in us. When we went to the ballot and casted and voted for Kiribiti That's where the problem started. You shouldn't be blaming the MCAs. You should be blaming yourself. You
Ah,
don't
wait, Ram. You didn't
like,
finish.
I'm saying that even as much as we are blaming MCA, like Kibet is saying, there is a political parties systems that we Kenyans did not abide by. Especially, I look this towards nomination, not only an election. When you are bulldozed and you see members of public or citizens are lining up to go nominate their preferred candidate, and the party comes up with somebody who's really not really its preferred candidate, we are brewing trouble. And I think one of the things we should be restricting by is our political
Closing
parties
remarks.
system, our political parties act. You know.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
No. I think my last closing remark.
you-
No, I didn't give closing remarks,
I'm
Ram.
giving you 30 seconds.
Only just to be fair.
30 seconds.
Only to be fair. What I was going to say is that unless we really come up with systems to ensure that some of these guys we give a lot of power are checked, then we are not going to go anywhere. It's like, I mean, a chief's son somewhere in the village who knows the father is a chief. So he walks around bulldozing everybody because he knows at the end of the day, he's the chief's teenager. We give a lot of power, we don't give checks. These are, I mean, they feel like they're the law to themselves, which they're not.
Arebo Moyo, legal expert and lawyer. Thank you very much for coming. Daniel Orogo, political analyst. And to my father's right, that is, of course, Daniel Kibet. Right here, it has been Eye on Politics. Time is not on our side, but ensure that you join us on our hashtag on Twitter at KBC Television and at Ram Aguko. The hashtag, Good Morning Kenya, on Twitter. Safin is coming up in the next interview with more. Of course, we are having a discussion concerning the handicap. Do not go away. This is Good Morning Kenya. We're taking a short break. Bye-bye.